Fantastic. Well, guys, I think because we have got a lady here who has got some really interesting stuff to share with us about ditching imposter syndrome and a lot of interaction, a lot of activity. So get ready to play fully on, because this is not a sit and listen session. From what I hear, I'm going to hand over to Clare Josa right now, who is going to be talking to us about ditching that imposter. Welcome, Clare. Over to you. I am going to...
Thank you, Tess. Thank you, Tess. And welcome, everybody. I'd love to hear from you via the chat. Where in the world are you joining us from? So where in the world are you based? I'm currently in Salisbury, in Wiltshire in the UK, about 250 meters from the famous cathedral, beloved of Russians, as it were, and Novichok. And I've spent most of my life, well, traveling. The last 20 years, definitely in the UK. But so we've got Aberdeen, Scotland, Fife in Scotland, another 5, Aberdeenshire. Okay, Durban, South Africa. South Africa was my last trip abroad prior to COVID. We got stuck out there in, it's fantastic, but we got stuck out there when they closed the airports due to COVID outbreak. Canada, British Columbia, more in Aberdeenshire. So welcome. I want you to use the chat today. It won't show up on the recording. If you ask me a question or make a comment, I won't mention your name. So what is said in the chat is just between us in this session. And I just want to check, can everybody see me and see my slides okay? If you can just give me a yes, fantastic. And obviously you can hear me or you wouldn't be responding, so that's great news. So today we're going to talk about ditching imposter syndrome. We are going to look at, firstly, those who need to know the background. I started off as a mechanical engineer. I've been working in this field, specializing in imposter syndrome since 2003. I've had 8 books published. The most recent one was 3 years ago, Ditching Imposter Syndrome. And my big passion is helping you to clear out the glass ceilings you never even knew you'd put in your own way. So today we're going to be looking at it from the context of growing your business and taking it to the next level. So today we're going to look at what imposter syndrome is and what it isn't. And I know that some people watching this, either with us live or on the replay, are experienced coaches and therapists and may be seeing clients with imposter syndrome. Some of you might be working more as consultants and you'll be seeing clients that you're trying to support who've got imposter syndrome, meaning they're sabotaging results. So it's important to know what it is. What our research says, I've run 2 major research studies into this. The most recent one was published last month. How to spot the warning signs, why the strategy that the vast majority of us use falls apart, 3 things you can do today, and then my 5-step process. So what is imposter syndrome? The imposter phenomenon is a term that was coined by Pauline Clance and Suzanne Eames back in 1978. It's since become known in the UK as imposter syndrome, but technically it's not a syndrome. It's not clinically diagnosable. So I describe it as the secret fear of being found out as not good enough or a fraud, despite external evidence that we're doing well. And this is the absolute key, is that being found out. That is one of the things that makes the difference between imposter syndrome and self-doubt. So it's not just self-doubt and spiky suit. A lot of people are like, oh, imposter syndrome is just the snowflake version of self-doubt. I describe the imposter syndrome gap. It's the gap between who we see ourselves as being and who we think we need to be to do or achieve something. And because sometimes we have to get to the other side, we build what I call the bridge of coping strategies to go over the ravine. And if you've got fantastic coping strategies, that might feel a bit like the Forth Bridge. However, it might also feel a little bit like an Indiana Jones style rickety rope bridge that as you're tentatively walking over it, you're terrified to look down. And the problem with this is the bridge of coping strategies takes a huge amount of effort. And before we can apply our coping strategies, because imposter syndrome is run by the primal part of the brain, it's looking out for threats and survival, we've often started to self-sabotage already. So we're constantly playing catch up. So it's not the same as self-doubt. When we ran the 2019 research study, we found there were 2 types of self-talk running. People talked about what they could and couldn't do. They talked about the experience they had, the skills or the knowledge that they had. You know, I don't know as much as I should. Then The other type of self-talk was, who am I to do this? What if they realize they made a mistake in choosing me or hiring me or selecting me for this contract? What if they find out I'm faking it, that I'm a fraud? What if they find me out? What if they find out I'm not good enough? And what we found in the research study is the self-talk on the left was all about self-doubt and confidence, the kind of thing that a decent pep talk and a bit of rational common sense will often make a huge difference to, or skills-based training. The self-talk on the right-hand side was warning signs for imposter syndrome. It was about us. It was personal. Who am I? Not what can I do? So from this, we developed the imposter syndrome iceberg model. It starts above the surface with our actions, the kind of stuff we're normally fairly consciously aware of. Our self-talk is just below the surface. We do everything we can normally to drown that out. Below that, our beliefs, what we can and can't do, how the world works. Then at that deeper level, what's important to me? And right there at the bottom, that sense of self. Who am I? Why am I here? That existential stuff. And we found that self-doubt tended to be more kind of above the surface, a bit in the limiting beliefs, but mostly in our skills, our capabilities, the self-talk, and our actions. Imposter syndrome was much deeper below the surface. This was really the identity level stuff that was coming out that we weren't necessarily consciously aware of. And one of the important things we found is the more important something is to us, the more likely it is to trigger imposter syndrome that's previously been dormant. So it's like the more important it is, the more it cranks up the dial. And we found that self-doubt is about what we can and can't do. Imposter syndrome is about who we think we are, with that secret source of being found out. So does that make sense so far? Yeah, and one of the reasons this is really relevant, let me know via the chat if that makes sense to you. The reason this is relevant is because a lot of people think imposter syndrome is incurable, but that's actually because they've been trying strategies that work with confidence and self-doubt. And to get to that identity level, you need to use a different set of tools. And what you're going to learn today, what I want to share with you, works for both. But if in the past you found that imposter syndrome hasn't cleared out for you whenever you've tried, it could be because you were using the self-doubt type of strategies. So the other way I define imposter syndrome when I'm working with people one-to-one or in one of my courses is the secret fear of others judging us the way we're judging ourselves. And this is the real essence of imposter syndrome. We are spending our whole time judging ourselves, deciding we're lacking, and being worried that somebody else might be judging us too. This then makes us play small. It makes us hold back. So how widespread is it? Well, it's actually increased from the figure I'm going to give you here as a result of lockdown. But if I told you that in the female respondents, it was 52% had struggled with it daily or regularly in the past year, what do you think the figure was for the male respondents? Let me know in the chat. If it was 52% for female respondents, what do you think it was for the men? Okay, so 20% less because men are cocky. Okay, one more guess. What percentage of men do you think said they've struggled with it daily or regularly in the past year? And by the way, if you don't want to be public, you can direct message me on this as well. Yeah, so 60% is another guess there. It was 49. So the figures for men and women are almost identical. The difference is the way we tend to handle it. What people tended to do, the male respondents tended to push it on down, push on through the fear, which meant they were 5 times more likely than women to turn to alcohol, medication, or drugs to handle the anxiety. The female respondents were 20 times more likely than the men to talk to people about it, to ask for help, but also they tended to then hold back and not step up for opportunities to shine. So for the men, it was a pushing on through. For the women, it was a holding back. Neither of those is healthy. What's healthier is clearing out imposter syndrome. But this is one of the reasons why you might have heard a lot of stuff on social media and on Google about imposter syndrome only affects women. It doesn't. It's just we handle it very differently. So some of the ways we self-sabotage, if we're looking at running our business, Imposter syndrome is one of the single biggest factors why we have big dreams and don't necessarily take action on them. So 42% in the past year had turned down opportunities to shine and be visible. You know, the classic journalist phones you for a quote and you just don't pick up the call, or you wait slightly too long to reply and that opportunity's gone. 54% people were routinely putting their success down to fluke or luck. 68% not going for contracts for which they were qualified, or not going for speaking gigs or doing articles or interviews. 89% were holding back on speaking up with their ideas and opinions, turning them from Marmite to beige. Yeah, anybody in the UK doesn't know what Marmite is. It's a yeast extract spread we like to put on bread that people either love or hate, yeah? But 89% were holding back on their ideas. And 82% found that feedback and comparing themselves to others were daily triggers for imposter syndrome. So I want to come back to that, the 82% figure, comparisonitis. I want to know from you in the chat, have you experienced this, where you go on social media or you're looking at somebody who's bragging about an award somewhere and you just kind of feel like you want to shrink? You're scrolling through and you're thinking, no, okay, they're better than me. And it makes us hold back on what we're doing. This is one of the biggest ways that imposter syndrome can sabotage a business. It's comparing ourselves to others, deciding we're not good enough, and we either completely redesign our strategy or we just hold back. So it's one of the biggest risk factors. Yeah, that's shrinking. So I call it the flinch factor, where your body kind of goes, no, even if your head is saying yes. And that flinch factor is run by the primal part of the brain that actually decides which actions you take. So you end up in this constant inner conflict, trying to push on through the imposter syndrome. So it ends up making our biggest business decisions. At the simplest level, the unconscious mind wants to keep us safe. If we've trained it to pay attention to imposter syndrome, then imposter syndrome will decide what we say yes to, whether we're overgiving, how we interact with clients. So what triggers it? We found from the research studies, it's anything that creates a shift in identity. So if somebody's employed, that might be a promotion. If you're running your own business, it might be adding in a new product. It might be stepping up to be more visible with your PR. It might be making the shift to scale your business from in-person to digital, for example. Anything that means that imposter syndrome gap, yeah, who we see ourselves as being and who we think we need to be, anything that widens the gap means that we need a bigger and better bridge of coping strategies to be able to get to the other side. So changing a core aspect of our business, a golden opportunity or a stretch project, or just somebody even suggesting it. Stress, criticism, comparisonitis, burnout, and alpha male competitiveness. So these are all things that can trigger imposter syndrome. And it can be really, really context dependent. So somebody might be absolutely fine and confident giving a presentation normally, for example, but if a certain person's in the room, it can trigger imposter syndrome for them. So it can be that specific context-wise. So audience participation time, okay? How the mind-body link works. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you to stand up and I'm going to ask everybody to do this. So stay sitting down for a moment, but if you can just put your feet flat on the floor, if you've got earphones or mugs of coffee or anything, make sure you're not about to destroy laptops and stuff, okay? So I invite us to say together, I'm tired and stressed, okay? Because that's not something that we ever say. I am tired and stressed. I am tired and stressed. I am tired and stressed. Really meaning it. I am tired and stressed. One more time. I am tired and stressed. And now try and stand up. Everybody together. I'm already standing up, so that's why you can't see any difference with me. And notice how that felt. Okay. Give that a shake off. Thank you. You can sit down. Okay. So next, when you're sitting down comfortably again, I am confident and strong. I am confident and strong. I am confident and strong. Say it out loud. I don't care if you're in a cafe or anything. I am confident and strong. I am confident and strong. One more time, really mean it. I am confident and strong. And now stand up. Come on, you can do it. Oh, there you go. You can keep that one. Thank you. You can sit down. That's the hardest thing I'm going to ask you to do today. I would love to hear from you via the chat. What was the difference between those two? What was the difference between those two? The first time you stood up and the second one. So energy. I'm confident and strong. I could say it louder. Heaviness to lightness. My bum almost felt glued to the chair. Yeah, a really common one as well is my knees felt 20 years older the first time. Yeah, you kind of groan and creak your way out of the chair. Heavy to energized. And all we did was change 2 words. We just changed 2 words. And yet our self-talk runs our inner dialogue on autopilot most of the time. Yeah, and we're much more likely to be thinking I'm tired and stressed or I'm not good enough than I'm confident and I'm strong. Now, what happened there is the stress cycle and how we self-sabotage. So we thought a thought. Yeah, it might be a fear-based thought. It might be a complaining thought. It might be a worry type thought. That fires off biochemical reactions in the body. That, for those of you that like the tech words, that's the autonomic nervous system. So the bit that we're not consciously aware of that kind of makes hair grow and heart beat. That fires off the fight, flight, freeze response with the sympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for keeping us alive in a dangerous situation. Are we going to run from the tiger? Are we going to go and bip it on the nose? This happens without us even being consciously aware. Those chemical reactions in the body create our experience of emotions. They define our actions, and the cycle goes round. So the emotions feed more of the negative thoughts that feed a stronger biochemical reaction in the body that feed more emotions that govern our actions. We saw that there by changing 2 words. The action of standing up was completely changed. So imagine if we spent decades rehearsing the what if they find me out, how that will impact the actions that we take, because your body feels every thought you think. And we have so much more control over our thoughts than we think we do. This is something I learned the hard way. 15 years ago, I unexpectedly became a single mother with a toddler and I was pregnant. It wasn't the life I'd planned. And I remember being very, very emotional. Yeah, it was really, really hard. I was already an NLP trainer by then, so neuro-linguistic programming. None of the tools I had were doing anything. I was already a Reiki master, and I was really stuck in a lot of emotional pain. And I realized one night at 3 a.m, what was causing the pain was not the external situation, though that was in no way acceptable. It was the stories I was telling myself about it. And I realized I didn't have anything in my toolkit to be able to truly press pause on those thoughts and rewire them to be something else. You know, rather than plastering over the top with positive affirmations when my whole body was primed to think bad stuff. And so it set me on a mission. And I spent years studying to become a yoga teacher, a meditation teacher, studying all different types of modalities to finally use my inner engineer, 6 Sigma brain, to pull out the bits that made the biggest difference so you can learn how to choose what's to feed. So there are 2 types of fear I discovered on this journey. The first one I call legitimate fear. There you go. So this is the kind of thing where you're about to get in a plane and do some parachute jumping, which I did at uni to try and cure my fear of heights. Doesn't work. Different fear completely. And I have a glorified tablecloth strapped to my back. Probably a bit of a hangover because it was always early on a Saturday morning. And I would get in this perfectly serviceable Cessna that had no door. And because I was the smallest, they always made me jump first to keep the center of gravity of the plane. And I'd be sitting there, heart pounding, you know, palms going clammy, shallow upper chest breathing, going, this is really scary. And that's legitimate fear. That's my body saying, Claire, is this really such a good idea? Remind me why we're doing this. But then there was the next level of fear, the mind story fear. This was my what if-ing. What if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? What if the person who packed my parachute had a worse hangover than me? Yeah, because you could get a free jump if you packed 5 parachutes for other people. All of this what ifing made me just as scared as the physical act of getting in the plane. When we're looking at our business, what if the client doesn't like that proposal? What if I don't get work in next month? What if I can't work out how to solve such and such a tech problem? All of this what ifing is mind story fear. It's not actually legitimate survival fear, but because the body feels every thought you think, and it can't tell the difference between legitimate survival fear and mind story fear, it fires off all the chemical reactions as though that client proposal were actually a saber-toothed tiger popping its head out of your computer screen. And this is why we self-sabotage. This is how imposter syndrome gets in our way. And another question, have you ever had your mind go blank in a meeting? Give me a yes. Yeah, give me a yes in the comments if you've ever had, because I've just done it to you now. It's like spotlight on you. You can kind of feel the attention coming around the room, and you've got a great answer until just before the spotlight comes to you and you're like, wibble, yeah? So absolutely, yes, 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 fantastic. So this isn't your fault, okay? Because the minute the spotlight's gone off you, those answers come back. So this is the other way that imposter syndrome gets in our way. When fight, flight, freeze kicks off, it diverts the blood flow in the brain from the prefrontal cortex that knew the answer to the question to the primal part that cares about survival. That's the bit that it processes information ever so slightly quicker and sooner than the prefrontal cortex. So it's the bit, if ever you've crossed a road and you've been just about to go and something holds you back and then a car you hadn't spotted goes past, that is your body doing the right thing with the primal part of your brain. It's a survival thing. So when you're stressed, when that cycle is running, we don't have the blood flow in the right part of the brain to be able to be creative, to be able to innovate, to be able to solve problems, to be able to put together a compelling email, all of the things that we might take for granted, even to concentrate. So you have to be able to cut the stress levels to be able to think straight again. So this is another one of the impacts of imposter syndrome. So we work harder and we push harder to be able to get the same results, having to work longer hours, having to put more effort in, having to micromanage ourselves, desperately checking that we've not made mistakes, because the stress that imposter syndrome causes means we are literally not able to think straight. So some hidden warning signs for imposter syndrome. So we asked people in the more recent study, the 2022 study, what do you do when imposter syndrome strikes? A huge number of people, I'm working too hard, I get overwhelmed, I don't speak up, I don't voice ideas, I doubt myself, I've got anxiety, fear, I worry, I move into survival mode, I am holding back, so you're holding back your career or holding back your business. I don't feel valued, I am coping. All of this is pretty painful, yeah? If we're looking at it from our business point of view, the kind of things that we're doing are not going for those opportunities, underpricing, holding back on our best ideas, feeling scared on social media, potentially resenting having been overgiving to clients. There are all sorts of ways that we self-sabotage when imposter syndrome kicks in. So how to spot the warning signs? There's a model we've got called the 4 Ps. And I'd love to hear from you when we've whizzed through these. You can let me know in the comments how many of these 4 you recognize. And what you're looking for is changes in them. So the first P is perfectionism. We found 16% of people were natural born perfectionists, but I call them personality perfectionists. 52% were using it as a stress-based imposter syndrome style coping strategy, setting standards incredibly high and then writing it off as fluke or luck if we actually meet them. The next one is procrastination. And procrastinating, it can be everything from the cute cat videos to doing the stuff at the bottom of the to-do list in order to avoid the thing at the top that maybe was making us feel a bit uncomfortable. It's much easier to do when we're running our own business than when we're employed by somebody else. Project paralysis is the 3rd P. That is putting something off, that complete rabbit in headlights, and using the adrenaline from the deadline to push on through and get it done. And the 4th P is people pleasing, which is huge, yeah, particularly for business owners. This is the overgiving. This is not having clear boundaries, saying yes when it should be a no. discounting without being asked, not charging what we're worth, giving things that weren't in the contract. You know, scope creep can be a huge thing. So for entrepreneurs, these 4, you're looking for changes, okay? If you've just stepped up to do a project that maybe is outside a comfort zone, which of these 4 are you then using as one of your coping strategies on that bridge of coping strategies? So, okay. Yeah, doing 6 Zoom meetings a day, people pleasing is real. So how many of those 4 do you recognize in yourself? How many of those have you used, either if you're stressed or if imposter syndrome strikes? Okay, all apart from exceptionism, apart from perfectionism. So all 4, who else? Any more votes? How many of these do you recognize in yourself? Procrastinate. Now, the thing is, depending on what your business is, you'll be seeing these in your clients as well, because it's not just us who can run imposter syndrome. If you've got a client running imposter syndrome, they can sabotage the results that you can help them get. Yeah. And it can be why you think, well, I literally showed them step by step how to do this, and they don't get the outcome or they don't take the action because they're using their own coping strategies. It's also why, as business owners, say you go on a marketing course and you do whatever the guru said and you just don't get the results. It's often because we've got imposter syndrome causing us to subconsciously self-sabotage. So we're not quite all in, because being all in is absolutely terrifying. And because this is about who we are, and imposter syndrome comes with a lot of shame and taboo, we hold back and then justify it as, well, I was too busy, or it wasn't the right timing, or that stuff just didn't work for me. So these are some of the ways it can get in our way and also in our client way. So, very quick one for you, because I'm aware of timing today, and I know that you've got some lovely stretching coming. How do you see imposter syndrome getting in people's way with their business? Let me know some ideas via the chat. How do you see it getting in people's way in their business? You can either go to the group chat or you can send me a direct message. Maybe what kind of things have you done in the past year or so that you look back and think, yeah, that was imposter syndrome? Okay, so not starting things, taking on new challenges, okay, not having the confidence to do some things. I've seen it stop people earning because they miss opportunities, absolutely. Implementing strategies we teach, taking action we ask on, we need to help them further. Yeah, they need so much more support from us if they're running imposter syndrome. So these are some of the ways, and I invite you to have a think about that after this session as well, is how might you have got in your own way in the past year as a result of imposter syndrome, because you can clear it out and then you don't need to do that stuff anymore. So practical solutions, creating breakthroughs. The biggest mistake I see people making is hoping it will just go away. Yeah, we can build a pretty good bridge of coping strategies, and there are millions of articles on Google on how to build a better bridge of coping strategies. But as soon as that stretch comes up, either the bridge falls into the ravine or we need to desperately put more planks on. And this is the problem with the coping strategies. The most common approach people take to imposter syndrome is ways to cope. Yeah, well, I can do this because, if I work around it in this way, I can push myself on through. Whatever it is we've got on our bridge of coping strategies. But if that gap widens, the bridge is no longer enough. And we often don't realize until after we've self-sabotaged. So the answer is to clear the fear. Don't push on through the fear, clear the fear and do it anyway. And do the work, that inside work that allows you to release whatever your triggers are that are driving imposter syndrome, to close the imposter syndrome gap by allowing yourself to become the version of you that you need to be to achieve that outcome or goal. So how to support others, because I know a lot of you might have clients or colleagues and friends. If you go to clarejosa.com/advice, I've got a guide there for you on 5 super common bits of advice to avoid like the plague and what you can be saying and doing instead. So that's clarejosa.com/advice. That's one of my gifts to you today. is if you want to be able to have that conversation with clients, it suggests ways to do it that are healthy and supportive, and how to go kind of beyond the tears sympathy to actually be able to do something useful to support them. And then there's 3 things I want to teach you today that you can actually start doing today to start turning this around. 1 is going to be how to press pause, an emergency technique if imposter syndrome strikes. 2, how to rewire the neural pathways, the thought habits that kick off the whole imposter syndrome cycle. And 3 is how to connect with your inner cheerleader, so you can actually start to rewire the brain and the body to spot what you're doing well, rather than just beating yourself up. So the pressing pause, there's a bit more audience participation, but it's so much easier than last time. You don't even have to stand up for this one. I'm just going to ask you to breathe, okay? So I invite you to think about something that, if you experience imposter syndrome, has maybe been triggering imposter syndrome for you, okay? Make it about a 4 out of 10. And if you don't experience imposter syndrome, think about something that's been stressing you. Again, about a 4 out of 10. So just taking a moment to let yourself go through the thoughts and the story about whatever that thing is. And then when you feel ready, taking your right hand and placing it over the diaphragm. So that's between the rib cage and the belly button. Okay, and we're going to do 3 deep sighing breaths, breathing in through the nose and out with a sigh. 1 more, breathing in through the nose. This time as you breathe in, bringing the shoulders up to your ears. And as you breathe out, just letting them drop. And then if it feels comfortable for you, keeping your hand over that part of your belly, softly closing your eyes. And for the next few moments, allowing yourself just to become fully aware of the movement of your hand as you breathe in and you breathe out. And if your mind wanders, just gently guiding it back to rest your awareness on the movement of your hand as you breathe in and you breathe out. And as you prepare to release the practice, just allowing yourself to give yourself a little smile. Open your eyes if they were closed. Maybe give yourself a stretch and a yawn. Oh, needed that one. And now, what did you notice? What has shifted for you? What shifted in your body? And what shifted in your thoughts about whatever it was you were thinking about? And let me know via the chat. You can do it direct to everybody or straight to me. So calmness, feeling really calm. What did you notice about the thoughts? More positivity, fantastic. Anybody notice their thoughts slowed down? Yeah. Yeah, they slow down. They might get quieter. They might get calmer. Often, even in just that 60 seconds, we might suddenly find that we've got an obvious solution. Yeah. Caught myself judging myself for doing the exercise. That's absolutely fine. Everything here is real. And the key here is it's the first time you've done it. So we're just playing with it, but refocused on the movement. So when we're doing this, this is why it's really important. If your mind wanders off and has a whole other conversation, guide it back with complete acceptance rather than beating yourself up, because then you're just going to trigger more stress thoughts. Okay. So this resetting, whenever you feel an imposter syndrome thought coming, you can use that And then there's a self-mentoring question I want to give you that you can use once you've pressed reset. Is this really true? Or is it just imposter syndrome speaking? Is this really true? Or is it just imposter syndrome speaking? When you've pressed pause to calm the thoughts, and that is the absolute critical first step, you'll find 99 times out of 100, it'll just be, okay, it's just imposter syndrome. Great. Well, do I want to go down that whole rabbit hole and that self-sabotage? Or shall I just get on with doing what I was going to do? It takes the mind story drama out of the self-talk. That means we're not firing off the biochemical reactions in the body and those emotions, and we're not going to need to self-sabotage in order to feel safe. So the next thing I want to teach you today, and we've already done one bit of this, is how to rewire the neural pathways in your brain to start to turn your inner critic into a genuine cheerleader. So this is a 3-step process that I invite you to play with 3 or 4 times a day when you don't need it. Because the more you do this, the more you're rewiring the neural pathways. Because what happens at the moment is imposter syndrome strikes, something presses the button, the whole cascade of autopilot thoughts kicks off, the biochemical reactions in the body. This is about giving you space to choose. And then, this works in the moment. It's like a first aid technique. And the more you play with it, it also becomes preventative because it rewires the neural pathways of imposter syndrome self-criticism and helps you to go through neutral to be able to think more positive, constructive thoughts instead. So the ABC is super simple and highly effective at rewiring the neural pathways. A is accept. So Carl Jung said, what we resist persists. If you have a negative thought and you start interacting with it and trying to push it away and get rid of it, you're giving it all of your focus, attention, and energy. And so suddenly it becomes everything to you. It wins, yeah? Instead, what you're doing is, oh, that's a negative thought. So accept doesn't mean you're saying it's right. You're simply going, oh, that was an imposter syndrome thought. That's interesting. Then the B, super simple. We've just done it, that breathing process. This takes you through neutral. It helps you to press reset. That's 60 seconds of the conscious belly breathing with your hand over the diaphragm gets you into neutral. So this is why people find positive thinking and affirmations often don't work, is you're going from negative thought to positive thought, and it becomes a bit like a kind of a yo-yo. Yeah. By going through neutral, you're priming the body to be open to thinking a different thought, to being more positive, rather than trying to force positive thinking into a body that's primed for the negative thought-based emotions. And then the C is choose. Having done the A and the B, you consciously choose to think a thought that brings you a sense of relief. Now, this is one of the techniques I teach on my imposter syndrome bootcamp, and there are lots of different layers that we can go to on this. But in its simplest form, the choose is simply a thought that makes you feel a bit happier. Because what you're doing is trying to rewire the neural pathways so you don't have the autopilot of going down the rabbit hole of the negative self-talk. You can bring ninja techniques on here where you actually add in all sorts of conscious, positive self-talk related to whatever you were beating yourself up about. But in the simplest form, if all you take away from this session today is the ABC, accept, breathe to reset that nervous system stress response, choose a thought that makes you feel better. Even if you need to carry a post-it around with 3 thoughts to choose from. Yeah, because some people, if we've spent a lot of time beating ourselves up, it can be quite hard to find a C for a choose, but just choosing one thought that makes you feel better means another thought will follow it, and then another one, and another one. So you've reset that cycle. The more you play with this, then in the moment, if imposter syndrome kicks off, maybe a client says, so tell me, what is your fee for this? Yeah, ABC, and you get back to having a drama-free, confident conversation. So the ABC is incredibly powerful. Accept, breathe, choose. And then the third technique I want to share with you today is reconnecting with your inner cheerleader. So there's a bit of the brain called the reticular activating system, and one of its roles is to filter the information from the outside world. You know, it's the bit that It's processing those thousands of bits of information that are coming in at any one time. You know, I know, for example, at some level, how much oxygen there is in the air that I'm currently breathing, what the air pressure is in my left ear, what the blood pressure is in the little finger on my right hand, but I don't want to be consciously aware of that. The reticular activating system is the bit that lets stuff through to the conscious mind, which we program in part through our habitual thoughts and our actions. So if we're running a lot of imposter syndrome, it's really good at saying, oh yeah, beating herself up is so important to Claire. I'm going to make sure she spots every single opportunity today to do that. And it's why we can find it really hard to also spot what we're doing well, because we need to rewire that part of the brain to spot our achievements too. So we even that out. And it's not about becoming a kind of a Pollyanna and pretending that we're brilliant. It's about balancing, being able to evaluate our performance rather than judging ourselves. Remember that fear of others judging us the way we're judging ourselves. So celebrating your micro wins, what you do for this, at the end of the day, when you shut off your laptop or phone, and I'm hoping that does happen for each of us at some point during the end of the day, you write down good old-fashioned something, pen, pencil, whatever, and paper, because that's really important for the left-right brain cognitive integrations there. You write down 3 things you did well. These aren't things you feel grateful for. It's not, it was sunny or my kids said something nice. These are 3 things that you did well. And there are 3 secret keys to this. The first one is you make them about your behavior. Because we're trying to break that link between the imposter syndrome and self-judgment, you need to get back up to that skills and capabilities level. So it's not, I am good at such and such. It's, I did this well. It's about your behavior. Make them specific. So make these 3 things you did well really specific. So your unconscious mind has to go, oh yeah, I remember that one. I'll give you that one. Yeah, the more specific you can be, the less the backfire effect will kick in, the less the unconscious mind will try and tell you that you're wrong. And then here's the key is don't just think them, feel them. So when you've written down your list of 3 things, go back through each and allow yourself, even if it's just this much, to feel and own, I did that well. Allow that to grow. Then look at the next one. I did that well. Allow that to grow, move on to the 3rd. So what this is doing is reprogramming the filters in the brain, creating really potent new neural pathways, because when we add emotion into a thought, it changes the neurology more quickly. You're also reprogramming the body's addiction to adrenaline, the stress hormone, to get that little dopamine hit of, I'm celebrating this. So this is a real fast track for being able to rewire the brain to spot what we're doing well as well, not just beating ourselves up. And it's about also resetting the internal referencing system so you can tell for yourself when you've done well, and it gets you off the praise criticism roller coaster that is so much harder when we're running our own business, because there's very rarely anybody there to go and chat with to say, actually, Claire, you're doing okay, yeah? So make them about your behavior, make them specific, don't just think them, feel them, yeah? And then in summary today, in our last few minutes, I want to teach you my 5-step process. So we start off when I work with someone on imposter syndrome, or when they do one of my courses on it, with clearing out the myths. So the imposter syndrome myths, they keep us stuck because the unconscious mind won't let us make a change it believes is impossible. So these are things like, it's incurable, or I need it to perform, or it's a sign of high potential, or without it, I'd be arrogant. If somebody is running these myths, they risk subconsciously self-sabotaging anything that they do to try and clear imposter syndrome out. I have a free training for that. If the myths are something you're interested in, that's at clarejosa.com/myths. Yours is my gift, okay? And then step 2 is taming the inner critic. So this is what we've been really looking at today, is that juicy, pressing pause, being able to rewire the neural pathways, connecting with your inner cheerleader. Because if you try to do the deeper identity level work while your thoughts are still completely out of control and you don't know how to choose which ones to feed, you're making your job an awful lot harder. So there's a lot more we can do, but the 3 things that we've done today will already help you start to make huge progress towards turning your inner critic into a genuine cheerleader. Then we go that level deeper and we look at the hidden blocks, fears, and excuses and start to clear those out. And at the 4th level, again, what are your hidden blocks? Okay, I can't do that because. So this is how to find your hidden blocks. Thinking about something you want to achieve where imposter syndrome is getting in the way. I can't do that because. Let 5 or so answers bubble up. Most of them you'll be able to just draw a line through because you'll be like, yeah, that's nonsense. But what's left gives you insights to the blocks that you need to clear out so you can move beyond the bridge of coping strategies to close the imposter syndrome gap. Then at level 4, it's all about becoming the real you. So this is where we go a layer deeper than the blocks and we look at things like secondary gain. What was that behavior doing for me? What's the hidden need that's being met by imposter syndrome? What do I need to release or accept or handle to be able to feel safe, showing up as all of who I really am, without the masks, the armor, the alter ego, being so comfortable in my own skin that I express my ideas and opinions in a way that also gives others permission to feel comfortable in their skin too. And briefly, because we've got our last few minutes, this is the key here, is becoming the real you. What would you do differently without imposter syndrome? I'd love to hear from you via the chat if you've got an answer that just springs to mind, but if not, allow yourself some time today to think about this. What would I be doing differently without imposter syndrome? How might that feel? Which version of me could I allow myself to become? And this is what people told us in the research study, the one that we've just published. How would it feel without imposter syndrome? Amazing, confident, fulfilled, proud, stretched, happy, achieving my potential, having more impact. It means something different for each of us, but I really invite you to sit with that, because the more you can connect with which version of you would allow yourself to become when you close the imposter syndrome gap, the more motivation and energy it will give you to take the actions to do something to actually turn this around. So be the best version of myself. Beautiful. And then the final step in the 5-step process is consciously creating your future. Because when you do that from that place of having cleared out the hidden blocks, having dealt with what was driving those blocks under the surface, taking off the masks and armor, feeling safe to be more of who you really are, the future you create is very different. The actions you take change. The impact you have is supercharged. So if you want to find out more, you can book a call. If you want to work together on this, I've got a whole website called Ditching Imposter Syndrome. I've got a podcast. I've got the Ditching Imposter Syndrome book. And I've also got a gift for you today, which is a research-backed assessment, absolutely free, to find out what your imposter syndrome score is, which of the 3 hidden drivers is most likely to cause you to self-sabotage, and you get a personalized action plan to get you started right away with things you can do today to start turning this around. So that is at clarejosa.com/embrace digital. And I'd love to hear from you. In the last few moments, have you got any questions that you'd like to ask me? Or what's your biggest light bulb from today's session?
I think we've got so many. I'm going to put myself, if I can spotlight. Yeah, I mean, for me, there were so many. I'd love to speak more about this, but we're going to have to move on to catch it and do some cool stretching. But yeah, for me, I wrote down 2 things. I am not my thoughts, and I'm so self-critical. So there you go. That was my two things I need to work on. I'd really love to get you involved in Subtriber, actually, and because I think all of us have a bit of digital imposter syndrome in there. So
well, give me a yell. Yeah, I'm at hello@clarejosa.com. And Neil, I'd invite you to put a tweak on those words. It's like, not I'm so self-critical, but I have been so self-critical. And that gives you permission to allow it to start becoming in the past. Yeah. So anyone here that was using that kind of phrasing, give yourself permission to start setting yourself free from this. Thank you, Neil. That was a lovely share. Anybody else got anything you want to ask me, or any light bulb you want to share? I'm very aware, Tess, that we're about to head over the stretch.
Yeah.
I think what we could do, Claire, is possibly pop an email or something, or people can actually write to you on your site. I think we need to get you back for a masterclass of some kind, and do some deep dive, because it just really so very interesting. I'm sure everybody's here people were making notes. I could just see people writing stuff down.
Yeah,
so thank you.
It was emotional, wasn't it?
Yeah. Really, really helpful and amazing. So thank you so much for what seems like it went so quickly. It's just like boom.
Yeah.
But we'll be in touch. For everybody who has registered for Claire's talk today, you will get access to this link. We will be emailing it through the system to you. So we've put that out, so you don't have to worry about if you haven't copied everything down. Claire, we'll be in touch. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.